Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we share the practice, the politics, and the pedagogy of what's currently happening in public education. As always, I ask that you write your name in the comments as you come in and let us know your thoughts and your concerns and your questions around the topic being discussed. You know, I'm a longtime teacher and I enjoy having an actively participating class, so please let me know that you're here and what your questions are. And if you listen later, you can still pop your questions in the comment section because I'll get notified and I'll get you a response. Now, thank you, everyone, and let's get started. Today, we will be chatting with an interesting young lady that will be popping on any minute now, and she is Miss Landry Champlin. And there she is.
Hello.
Miss Landry Champlin is also known as Miss Plano. So congratulations. And let me be a little transparent. I have been part of what I call competition. I'm on the board of the Asia World Broadcasting System, and they have done a pageant every other year until COVID. And what they did is they had young ladies from different Asian countries perform and do answer questions, very similar to the pageants that we know. And so I was part of that a couple of years ago, and I really, really know how much a competition like this can empower young ladies. So I'm curious, talk about what got you into the pageant world, what led you there, and talk about what you've gotten out of it.
Of course. Well, hi, y'all. My name is Landry Champlin, and I am Miss Plano, which is a preliminary title in the Miss Texas Miss America competition. So thank you so much, Dr. Good, for having me on your show. I'm so excited. So like we were talking about previously, the pageant world, per se, the competition world, is definitely something that is life-changing. I've been a part of the Miss Texas organization since I was 14, and I actually got into the competition through singing. I grew up a performer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and a very large part of Miss America organization is talent. So I actually entered a competition as a way to further my stage time and further my exposure as a performer, but I ended up just falling in love with the organization and the opportunities that it provides. I also, interestingly enough, am a person who stutters. And so when I was growing up, I really struggled to do anything that had to do with communication. And that's actually why I fell in love with singing at such a young age, because you don't stutter when you sing. But before competing in the Miss Texas organization, I struggled to order my own food at a restaurant, raise my hand in class, and introduce myself to new friends, you name it. Anything that had to do with communication, I definitely struggled with. So because of the Miss Texas organization and the opportunities I personally have had in the last 6 years to not only speak in front of an audience, but to speak and meet so many new people at a variety of service events, I have been able to not only combat my stutter, but recognize the importance that comes from stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing something that might push the boundaries of what you think is possible. So I got involved when I was 14, and it has absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. So I absolutely could not imagine being in any other organization.
I know you said singing helped overcome stuttering.
Yeah.
Did you also have speech therapy in school? What other thing helped? It can't only be singing. And the reason I say that, and I'm only assuming, and you get to correct me when I'm wrong, but I know there have been other singers, for example, who stutter, and even as older folks, they still stutter. They sing beautifully, but they still stuttered when they spoke. So you don't do that now. So what happened to you?
Right. Yeah. So I was actually diagnosed with a very rare form of stuttering called blocking when I was 3 years old. And essentially what blocking does is it's a misfiring of nerves in my brain, which causes my vocal cords to close up, which doesn't allow air to move through them so they don't vibrate. So when I was growing up, this kind of trigger, it was always brought upon by stress, by nervous situations. If I was really hungry, if I got really tired, any of those things, it would kind of trigger the stutter and it would make it worse. And so because of that, I was involved in some pretty heavy speech speech therapy from the time that I was 3 until I was in middle school. And while that was definitely helpful and it helped me control it, it was never something that I felt really comfortable doing, and it never really propelled me to feel comfortable speaking in front of others. I pretty much learned the tools just to do the bare minimum and to move through life only talking when I felt like I needed to. And so to answer your question about the music and the singing specifically, that was kind of the catalyst that I had to be able to communicate and create art and be able to stand up on a stage in front of people and be able to communicate without necessarily having to use words. So it was kind of a hybrid of all of the things. I definitely did a lot of speech therapy growing up, but singing was a huge coping mechanism for me. And then coming into the Miss Texas organization and kind of combining each and every one of those things with the opportunity to stand in front of people and share my story as a person who stutters, and to talk in schools and to talk at charity events and talk on stage during the competition as well. All of those opportunities have kind of led me to be able to find my voice and to share my story. So it's been a lot of different things that have led me to the point that I am today, but I am so thankful for all of the opportunities that the Miss Texas organization has provided.
Well, certainly that adds value to you in the sense of you've overcome a I don't want to say common disability, but not an uncommon disability, and taking yourself to the next level. But I'm sort of curious, at 14, were you still stuttering?
Yes. And it's actually really interesting. One of the stories that I always tell when I am speaking in some kind of a Miss Plano capacity, my very first competition I ever competed for was for the title of Miss Plano's Outstanding Teen. So basically the teen version of what I am now. And a large part of the competition is being able to speak during onstage question. And so during my first pageant ever, I signed up on a whim. I did it because, like I said previously, I thought it would be a great way to further my talent and my exposure as a singer. But during my onstage question, I walked on stage. I was in my beautiful blue evening gown that my parents had bought for me. And they asked me a question I should have been able to answer. I knew the answer to. But instead of answering it in a way that was articulate and in a way that made sense and in a way that did not involve stuttering, I simply stood there. And that was kind of one of those pivotal moments for me when I realized that, oh my gosh, you have a choice to make, Landry. You can either hide behind this stutter and stand here in silence for the rest of your life, or you can continue to step out in front of people and share your story and speak without being afraid of what happens if you do stutter in front of others. And so that single moment actually was kind of the creation now of my brand as Miss Plano. I've started something called the Live Fearless movement. And through that movement, I've been able to empower people across our globe to find comfort outside of their comfort zone. And so I know we will touch on that later, but when I was 14, I was still stuttering, but coincidentally, that is what led me to be able to do all of the wonderful things I'm doing today. So seriously, so grateful for that experience.
It speaks well of you. It's got to speak well of your parents that they raised you in a way that you were still confident enough to take that risk, right, and sign up. So kudos to you and to them. What would you say to our young ladies as far as encouraging them to sign up for pageant work?
Yeah. So what's actually really interesting is the Miss Texas organization and the Miss America organization as a whole is the largest provider of scholarships for women in the country. Every single year, we are awarding millions of dollars in scholarship funds that are being put to use at higher education institutions across our nation, which that in itself is absolutely incredible. But speaking from my personal experience, not only have I grown tremendously as a speaker, as a performer, as just a person in general, I personally have earned thousands of dollars, which are being put to great use at Oklahoma City University. I'm a music theater student there. And so speaking to young ladies and encouraging them to take part in this organization, I would say go for it. Take that step outside of your comfort zone. Not only will you earn scholarships and meet so many amazing people along the way, you have the opportunity to make a difference within your community and to share your story and to serve others. And that's really what it's about. I always say that in the Miss America program, we're in the business of people. And so if you have a passion for making our world a better place, if you have a passion for making people smile and making a difference, then the Miss America organization is definitely the place for you.
Well, you're quite the spokesman for them. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
well, when you believe. Right? When you believe in the product, you can really sell it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I'm a superintendent of schools, and I have beautiful, poised young ladies, or almost poised, as much as you can be in your tender high school years, but not a lot of money. Do you have to have money to be able to enter and compete? Are there sponsors? How do we do that?
Yeah, so what's so amazing about this program is it does not have to be an expensive hobby or an expensive opportunity. Actually, one of my favorite Miss Texas title holders, Shiloh Phillips, she was Miss Texas in 2006. Also, she was first runner-up to Miss America. She tells this really amazing story. She competed for Miss Texas one time, walked away with the state title after her very first time competing, and she tells this great story about how she didn't have a lot of money, she didn't have a lot of resources. She had a really great board behind her of directors that were supporting her. She had some really great sponsors, but primarily it was just Shyla and her mom. And they were going and she was competing and she wanted to win the thing. And she had, I believe it was a $200 evening gown, and the rest of her wardrobe, I think, totaled to about that exact dollar amount as well. It wasn't anything extravagant, but because of the content of her character and all of the work that she had done that year leading up to Miss Texas, she was able to walk away with the state crown. And so I think that's also a stereotype that we as title holders have to work towards breaking, right? Because this is not something that you have to pour a lot of money into. This is strictly an opportunity and a hobby that I think the more that you put into it, the more that you're going to get out of it in terms of quality. And so if you really have a passion for serving others, if you have a story to tell and you are being diligent in doing each of those things, you are going to do extremely well and you're going to reap the benefits of this organization.
Is it still beneficial, even if I don't win the crown, to go through
Oh my
it?
gosh. Oh my gosh. 100%. I am a prime example of this organization being a completely beneficial program and not walking away with the crown. I competed for Miss Texas Outstanding Teen 3 times and I never won. I got extremely close each of the times that I competed, and I walked away with a little bit of scholarship money every time, but I never walked away with that opportunity to serve the state of Texas as Miss Texas Outstanding Teen. But in those 3 years that I competed for the title of Miss Texas Outstanding Teen, I was overcoming a speech impediment. I was growing in confidence. I was creating service opportunities and speaking opportunities, not only for myself, but for others. I was getting out in my community and I was doing lots of things that I think most high school age kids were not doing simply because of the opportunities I had with the title I had. And then because of that experience competing as a teen, I got to come in and serve as Miss Fort Worth, my very first year competing for Miss Texas, which is like the big girl program, which is what I'm doing now. And I was very, very fortunate to have been awarded second runner-up to the overall title of Miss Texas. And that's ultimately led me to my opportunities this year as Miss Plano. I've been able to author a children's book, start a 501c3, create a national holiday, start a global mentorship program. Each of those things would not have been possible without the opportunity to continue competing. And so I'm almost thankful that I didn't win as a teen, because I don't think that I would have continued to push and continued to push to create these opportunities, not only for others, but for myself as well. So you don't have to win to be successful. We have so many young ladies that their lives have been changed for the good because of this program, and they never even had the opportunity to wear the state crown. So it's a beneficial program all the way around.
I think maybe that's where there's some marketing need on the part of the program, because most people don't see it. And you keep saying Miss America, Miss Texas program. It's a developmental program, right?
Right.
And I don't think people see it like that. I think maybe they've got a marketing opportunity that they need to do so that they're selling the whole thing and not just the one night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's actually really interesting that you talk about it being a program and it being an experience, because that is so true. I won the title of Miss Plano in September of 2019, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I've had my title since then. We had a holdover year, and so just like you were saying, it's so much more than just that 1 week of competition for the title of Miss Texas. I have had almost 2 years of opportunities to spread my social impact initiative, serve the community, and do all of the wonderful things that this program really has given me the opportunity to do. And so just as you were saying, it is so much deeper than that. And so I really feel a lot of pressure and a lot of things to be able to make sure that I am being the best title holder and the best role model and example I can be, because it is so much more than just that 1 week.
Well, and again, I think that a lot of people have an old-fashioned idea of pageants, and I'm blown away by Chandler Foreman. She came to my school. Matter of fact, my granddaughter happened to be there, so I had pictures with her, and it was so nice. She has done so much to further not only the program but diversity. Just the program itself is diversifying, right? It's getting outside the norm of what it used to be. And then we had on Mallory, who was Miss Coppell, and because she's written a children's book. And what I like to do is to recognize you guys for this, that this is hard work. This isn't put some makeup on and show up in high heels. This is time. This is effort. And then on top of that, you had school, right? You had high school. Now you're in college, and I don't think your professors are giving you a bye, right? Because you work.
Oh, no, I wish. And it's actually really funny because I go to school in Oklahoma. And so the last month, just to kind of put this in perspective, I have driven from Oklahoma City back to Dallas 5 weekends in a row. And I'm doing it again next weekend during finals week too, because, you have to make sure that you're being the best title holder that you can be. So yeah, it's a lot, but it's so, so worth it.
So let's talk a little bit now about things that you've done.
Yeah.
On top of just being Miss Plano,
right?
You have a foundation. You're 501c3. You've written a children's book. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned previously, my entire social impact brand as Miss Plano, and really just as Landry, is called Live Fearless, Defining Life Without Limits. And it was born, again, out of that experience I had, finding my own fearless, stepping outside of my comfort zone, competing in the Miss America organization as a person who stutters. And so because of that experience that I had, I felt so empowered being able to discover the power I had in my own voice, because I was able to face my fears and step outside of my comfort zone. So because of that, the Live Fearless mission has expanded this year into a 501c3 program called the Live Fearless Foundation. And what the Live Fearless Foundation aims to do is provide each of those opportunities for the students of Texas to find their own fearless through scholarship awards, through discussion series, through educational resources and programs. What we aim to do is we want to bring tangible opportunities to the students of Texas so that we can set them up for success, so they can put themselves in all types of positions to say yes to their goals and their dreams and work to fearlessly pursue each of those things. And then, as a way to further the Live Fearless Foundation and the Live Fearless message, I'm also the author of a brand new children's book called Fiona the Fearless Fox. I actually have it right here. And Fiona the Fearless Fox is a story about Fiona. She's a fearless fox, and she goes on an adventure empowering her forest friends to step outside of their comfort zones, recognize their talents, and ultimately overcome their fears in the pursuit of their dreams. And so it's a very, very sweet story. After she helps all of her friends, Fiona actually starts to doubt herself a little bit. And so it's really sweet. All of her friends come together and they empower her to find her fearless again. And so not only does it teach ideas about, stepping outside of your comfort zone and being confident in yourself and trusting in your preparation, it also speaks at great lengths about how we have to lean on each other, and we have to be able to serve each other and be kind to each other in order to be our most fearless selves. And so I'm so thankful that all of these projects and the Live Fearless mission has become what it has become today. I also, earlier this year too, this is something I got to do, I started a national holiday in partnership with the National Day Archives to create National Live Fearless Day. And on National Live Fearless Day, we empower people across the country to start something new, try something that scares them. And so that was another really great opportunity to get people involved in finding comfort outside of their comfort zone and doing all of the things in the fearless pursuit of their dreams. So it's been such a great ride.
What day was that?
Oh, our very first one was September 2nd, 2020. And what's so interesting about this, so I was crowned Miss Plano on September 1st, 2019. So September 2nd of 2019 was technically my first day serving. And it was also the day, coincidentally, that I made a promise to myself that I was going to spend every day as Miss Plano as my most fearless, best version of myself. And so September 2nd, 2020 was the 1-year anniversary of that. So I wanted to celebrate it with everyone. And so it was a huge, huge success.
So I love hearing that because, you know, so many people say they have a book in them, but they've actually gotten that book out and gotten it published and so forth. I'm buying copies for my counselors. When Mallory was on, she also had a book that she had published during COVID, and she's around your age as well. And again, doing what older adults say they want to do and just never do. And I actually, in the hands of my counselors, and I took pictures of the book in the hands of the counselors and sent it to her, and I'll do the same for you, because I think it's important that you guys know that these things are, that your effort, your book is making a difference with kids. In our case, kids of color, kids from low socioeconomic situation. And so being able to bring them a story behind the story like yours, it makes it extra special. So, matter of fact, I have some ideas about how to make it even more extra special. If it involves you in a video and a book for just a few minutes. So maybe we'll do that. We'll talk about that off air. But to have our young people see another younger person, you may be older than them, but you're not as old as me, right? And so when they see that, it empowers them, right? They might want to do that too. So, and just for a second, talk about how did you publish your book? What medium did you use?
Yeah, so I actually used Ingram Spark. So it's a self-publishing site. And I had a freelance illustrator come in and we collaborated together on the photos. But actually it was really interesting. I too wrote the words to my book during the COVID pandemic. And I think that's what's so incredible about that time, as tragic and as interesting as it was to live through the very beginning of that pandemic. It also allowed a lot of people to tap into their creative side and do things that they might have never been able to do before. So I was definitely part of that COVID Try Something New club and creating my nonprofit organization and the book The End of the Fox. So yes.
Yeah, and so that was one of your COVID blessings. You know, those are people like you and me. That's what we don't say COVID negative things. We say COVID blessings because there were a lot of them that came out at that time and still come out because we're not done figuring out how to move forward together, especially in the public education arena. Which is where I'm from. We have not figured it out all the way yet. But anyway, so my final couple questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, so hopefully as the next Miss Texas and the 100th Miss America, that would be the dream, obviously. I'm also a student at Oklahoma City University. I'm getting my Bachelor of Music with an emphasis in music theater. So after I graduate from OCU, I would love to attend law school. I have a dream of serving as an entertainment lawyer. I'm very, very passionate about not only the music industry and the music theater industry, but the opportunities that it provides, just as you were saying, to be able to create representation so that people are seeing people that look like them on stage. And so I really want to work to make our musical theater industry a lot more equitable. So in the next 5 years, I see myself as a former Miss Texas, former Miss America, hopefully in law school, but also continuing to spread the Live Fearless message. I think that's something that, regardless of if I have a title or not, is something that has definitely impacted my life and those around me for the better. So I also would love to write another book and just continue to be able to spread that impact for as long as I can.
Well, so far so good. You're batting 1,000, right?
Yeah.
And and I thank you. I thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share with us the steps that you took to get where you are, because they are very doable steps. They're steps that some of my kids in our schools can do. They just need to hear it and be encouraged. So thank you for that. And like I said, we're getting your book in front of kids, and we'll get pictures of that soon.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodness, that's my favorite part of podcasting, is bringing on talented young people who have superseded what, even probably their parents thought they could do, their teachers thought they could do, and now, going on and just becoming a blessing to us in so many different ways. That's why we're in this business, right? That's how teachers get in the business. That's how we keep educators motivated, by the by seeing our young people blossom and bloom and just do all sorts of neat things. So one of the things I wanted to chat with you today were some of the many headlines in PubEd that have popped up. Well, of course, we have so many, especially during COVID, but things are popping just everywhere. And so that is, I think, something we can't bring enough of to you as PubEd advocacy Army soldiers. You need to arm yourself with what's going on out there. So I need to bring you some, in some cases, interesting news, good news, some think about it news, so that you can stay in the loop, the PubEd loop, and know how important your vote is when you're looking at legislators and your messages to legislators, etc. So what kind of headlines do we have? Well, right now, can school nurses be the link between student health and academic gains? I had brought, a few weeks ago, I had brought the article about the importance of school nurses, that not everybody in schools had a school nurse, but now during COVID, school nurses have really assumed a bigger role as testing monitor, as COVID police, and I don't use that in a negative term really, but they've really had to do more than we've ever asked them to before. And now we've got research that says that the school nurse may be the link between student health and academic gain. And so what do we mean by that? Well, we have an organization called Paramount Health Data Project. It's run by Addie Angelov. She's the founder and executive director of this project. And what they've started doing is correlating information about the number of student visits to the school nurse with that student's academic data. And so what they're finding is, for example, that kids that have, let's see, what does it say? Kids that have between 5 and 7 visits to the nurse before a state exam, so let's say the several weeks leading up to the state exam, usually are your lowest scorers. And so nobody has really started looking at that data. And so it's, and like they said, this is really a blue ocean when you talk about health data for the schools, because they're not required to do it. They're not required to keep track of it. And so the Paramount Health Data Project works with schools to analyze various student demographic data with health and academic data to determine certain metrics, such as how many visits to the school nurse would students have before their math and English language achievement starts going down, and what type of ailments reviewed by the school nurse predicts lower academic achievement growth. For example, they now know that one school's academic health report card showed that students who visited the nurse 7 or more times had significantly lower academic scores, and that students with respiratory and ear, nose, throat complaints had the lowest academic growth from the beginning of the school to the end of the school year. So this is still new, and matter of fact, their data practice is pending copyright, patent pending. So that's how serious they are about getting this out. But that's interesting data, something we need to be aware is coming, and it makes perfect sense that if a child is not feeling well, they probably won't work as hard, score as high, write as much, talk as much, raise their hand as much, right? Eat as much, which eating we know for wellness purposes is important. There's just all sorts of correlations to health and outcomes, in this case, instructional outcomes. So that was a sort of interesting wake-up call of, hey, schools, you need to get with the school nurse and start looking at those kids who go to the nurse a lot, why they go to the nurse, and how is their academics. You can do that pretty primitively. You don't have to wait for the patent pending practice from the project, but something to think about. And you know, for the educators on here, I challenge you to bring that back to your schools and say, hey, maybe we can do some of that. That would be a good thesis for somebody or a good dissertation or something, right? And another headline has to do with a continuation of what we talked last week on. Last week we had Karen Bilo, who used to be Deputy Superintendent for the Commissioner of Education in state funding in Texas. And she was sharing with us the reason why we don't have the second and third strands of federal funds like many, many states already have. We shared with you the complex nature of our funding formula in Texas, and that the federal government and the Texas Education Agency were sitting down frantically trying to put this together and make sure that we had some equity for all districts. Now, if you'll remember, part of that equity piece was that actually schools which had higher socioeconomic kids were actually going to get little or no money, even though they had COVID expenses, and their kids also had COVID gaps, but because they did not qualify as Title I schools, they were going to be denied the money. So that was one of the sticky points that was keeping everyone in Texas from already getting their money. Matter of fact, I have an article here about districts in the Dallas area which are having to vote on closing a campus. This is Lovejoy ISD. It's a small suburban campus. It has 17 square miles, so it's not big. It's only 4% low socioeconomic, so it's a high income district. But they have a projected loss of 3.1 million this year and 6 million next year. And some of it has to do with the fact that several things leading up to a perfect storm. First of all, they're 95% landlocked. That means there's not much more land to build homes. The people who have homes there like it there, and they don't move. After their kids graduate, they stay. And so people with young kids are not able to find a home there. The homes are greatly in demand because everybody thinks that the Lovejoy schools are very, very strong. And so there's a lot of want to be there, but people aren't selling. And so that's number one. Number two, they used to have 37% of their kids in the 2009-10 school year be part of the K-4 enrollment. That's down to 29%. And last year, the district graduated 376 seniors, but they only had 178 kindergartners. So you can see that already, usually it's the top is large and it's almost like if you're lucky, your triangle is not very skinny. And so you get to keep most of your kinders all the way up to K-12, right? All the way. But in this case, it's looking like your bottom grades are lower in enrollment, which is leading to, of course, a loss in funds. Matter of fact, so that was number one. They don't have enough land for more houses. People aren't moving away. And another thing that's happening is that during the last legislative session, when the legislature created House Bill 3 for school funding, it was celebrated. I celebrated because my kids got a little bit more money. Dyslexia got funded for the first time. Special programs got more money, a little bit more money per kid. What we didn't realize is that money had to come from somewhere. And, you know, those education pools, they don't get much bigger with lots more money. They just move the money around, right? And so those of us who have Title I schools, we really don't think about that. We just are glad when we don't get cut or if we get a little bit more money. But in this case, districts like Lovejoy, high socioeconomic districts, they lost $331 per kid during that new formula, that state funding formula from House Bill 3. And if you multiply that times their kids, and then the lower enrollment, it leads to a $3 million deficit this year and a projected $6 million next year. So are they the only district in Texas? No. Matter of fact, just a little further west, we have Capel. In Capel ISD, there's an added sense of urgency. They have 14,000 students, and they, because of the funding loss, they had received a transition grant. So those districts that had lost money, lost funding because they were not Title I schools, had been granted a transition grant, and it gave them a little bit extra money. It made up for the money that the formula had cut. But those grants run out in 2024-25 school year. And so right now they've got a projected deficit of $7 million, and the expiration of the transition grant will push them to $10 million shortfall. So, this is our reality, folks. I don't know how many of you are thinking, man, what's going on in public education? Well, first of all, because of shows like this, you're hearing more news about public education than you ever did before. I remember a time, and I was a teacher, and I remember a time when I wasn't looking for public education news, no less getting it. I just stuck my nose in my classroom, I did my work, and then I went home, and I was a mother to 3 kids, and as long as the school was happy with my work and I was happy with my family work, it was all good. But now we understand that all of this needs to blend a little bit more, right? It needs to blend, and it's all correlated. And now I have the better understanding, since I became superintendent 9 years ago, that we do need everyone to understand how we all, are blended together. We no longer can ignore the schools, because we used to. When we were in school, we didn't ignore them, and if they did something to our kid, or if the grades were bad, that's when we paid attention to school, when we had school-age children. Once the kids graduated, we didn't pay attention to public education K-12 anymore. We just didn't. Now we have to. We have to stay cognizant of what's going on, because those young people are our economic future, as you've heard me say. And so making sure that you have a voice in how your taxes are used to educate those kids is part of your continued work. Even when you have kids no longer in the home, but maybe you start getting grandkids, right? But even without grandkids, we still need that. We still need your focus. We need your attention, and we need for you to just pay attention to what's happening in public education so that you can advocate for it when we have legislators who possibly want to do something like raid the teacher retirement fund because it's huge. It has to be. We have a lot of retired teachers, and want to use it for something else. You have to be a voice that says, no, we're not touching that money. We're leaving that for our retired teachers. And speaking of retiring or just resting, May is Mental Health Month. And you say, well, how are those two together? Because a lot of us are not resting enough. And it's showing. Our kids are depressed, especially in middle school. And some of our adults are more depressed or have more signs of depression, suicide ideation. And so I will continue my quest to encourage all of you to get more comfortable with admitting that one maybe is not feeling 100%. One is sleeping more. One is just not wanting to be as energetic. Those are all signs that something's going on, especially if that's unusual for you or your child. So let's talk about promoting awareness of children's mental health issues. So 1 out of every 5 kids in America has a diagnosable mental health disorder. See, 1 out of 5, 20%. Mental health problems in young people are associated with outcomes such as suicide, substance abuse, inability to live independently, justice involvement, dropout of school, economic hardships, and physical health problems. Far too many kids lack access to mental health and substance abuse services. Less than half of children with mental health problems get treatment, services, or support. And only 1 gets treatment, only 1 in 5 gets treatment from a mental health worker with specialized training to work with children. Families that are poor, families of color, and families with children with other disabilities or health concerns have an especially difficult time getting services that would identify, prevent, and treat mental health problems. Children and adolescents with mental health needs frequently are involved with multiple social service agencies or systems, including public health, mental health, substance abuse authorities, special education, child welfare, and juvenile justice system. However, there's no agency that sort of steps in there and takes responsibility to coordinate all that, right? So kids fall through the cracks. Untreated mental health needs among children and youth affects not only the young person and their family, but also schools, communities, and the nation as a whole. The costs are too high to leave the mental health needs of so many America's young people unaddressed. And so these are, to me, huge understandings, huge numbers. And of course, it's worse brought on by COVID with being home and more abuse at home and so forth. So what do we need to have addressed? We must address the prevalence of children and adolescent mental health problems and reduce the stigma faced by these young people. Primary care providers and educators and parents must consider mental health to be as important as physical health and as important as learning problems respectively. So mental health assessment and care needs to be integrated into the child's overall health care and education. So maybe we need to move to not only having a physical wellness test, like for example, my granddaughter in 5th grade just got a physical test so that she can go on to 6th grade up in Kentucky. And so maybe there needs to be a little mental thing going on, mental checklist, mental disorder checklist that the doctor does as part of that physical checkup. And the child can maybe do it privately with a doctor to admit that maybe he or she's not sleeping, admit that maybe he or she has depression or suicide ideation. But we may need to move to that, folks. So children's development of social, emotional, and behavioral well-being is central to their overall healthy development. So we can't just be happy with healthy bodies anymore. We have to be happy with a healthy mind, spirit, and body. And so we've got to get better with getting programs that help teachers, help parents learn the best ways to encourage healthy social, emotional, and behavior development in kids. It's imperative that we improve efforts around early recognition of mental health needs among children and adolescents and foster greater awareness of early signs. Early indications of mental health problems needs to be encouraged, but in preschool, child care, K-12 education, health, child welfare, juvenile justice, and substance abuse settings. So nobody's off the hook, right? Everybody is on the hook to have a mental health assessment that is part of their work. And then we must disseminate and promote effective practices that treat and prevent mental health problems in children and adolescents. Professionals working with children and adolescents in any setting can implement universal promotion and prevention practices and refer young people to, who need them to additional services. And you know, I'm going to say now that I will tell you, we probably don't have enough people in the mental health services area. We don't have enough people to work with the kids who will be coming as we get better at identifying this early on. And then the last one is effective children's programs and services utilize trauma-informed approaches. I've been talking about this for years through restorative practice, but traumatic experiences in childhood are not uncommon, and more than 2/3 of children report at least one traumatic experience before the age of 16. Further, trauma places children at greater risk for developing behavior disorders and substance abuse. And so you say, well, not my kid. My kid comes from a great home. Remember, these type of traumas can be just living in poverty, having food needs, having to move a lot because we're evading rent, not having enough money, having parents that are neglectful, parents that are abusive. And again, some of these are not income level based, right? And so needing to make sure that our teachers, our school staff, and really anybody involved in kids gets trauma training. One of the things we do at our schools is to train teachers to understand that you cannot punish the trauma out of kids. And our kids come with trauma. Many of our kids from single parent homes. I mean, that's mom's mad at dad. Kids want to see dad. Kids don't get to see dad. Kids don't have a dad. All of that can lead to a void, which kids will fill, folks. Kids will fill that void with behavior issues, substance abuse, violence, anger, and other behaviors, alcohol. So it leads me then to just chat about our last thing, because we talk a lot about kids and the need that kids have. But one of the biggest needs that we have in families and with all of our adults who work with children is making sure that they practice self-care. I can't tell you how many times, especially since COVID, and I've really read even more about social emotional learning and behaviors and practices. Always what I see now is the trend that says, hey parents, if you haven't healed the trauma you had growing up, or the trauma that came out of your last relationship with boyfriend, husband, father, if you haven't done anything to try to heal that trauma, chances are you won't be able to do as well of a job with your own kids in helping them and supporting them through their trauma. And so self-care is a huge part of helping kids. You have to stay mentally and physically healthy so that you can then help your children. Because children can be a handful, right? And if you're not at your dead level best, they'll take advantage of you, they'll run you over, they'll outsmart you, out-talk you, out everything. And so for you to be at your dead level best, you need to practice self-care. So unfortunately, the facts are telling us, and this is the Mental Health America website, on average, people only spend 15 minutes a day on health-related self-care. Self-care is proven to reduce stress and anxiety levels while increasing self-compassion. That's great. So tips for taking care of yourself: accept yourself as you are. Okay, that's a huge one. Remember that you're running your own race. Try not to compare your life to others. When you start comparing yourself to others, it's easy to feel inadequate. Don't do it. Focus on the basics. Sometimes being an adult is not easy, and it can feel impossible to get even the littlest things done, especially if you have kids. and kids at home doing virtual learning, and then you're working from home. Oh my goodness. Taking time for yourself doesn't mean treating yourself to special things. One of the most important things you can do is focus on steps to ensure that you're living a healthy lifestyle. Showering and brushing your teeth every day, eating nutrient-rich food, moving your body, and getting good sleep are all building blocks of self-care. So that's a great play. If you're not doing those things, and we do have some adults who are not even, they don't have the energy to brush their teeth, shower, brush their hair. They can hardly get out of bed. They can hardly make sure the kids are dressed and get to school because they're just in a bad place. Find what makes you happy. If you're caught up in taking care of all your responsibilities, like we just talked about, rather than taking care of yourself, you'll burn yourself out. You will. So find what makes you happy and get to do it every once in a while. Look forward to it. Give yourself permission. Practice mindfulness. You've heard that a lot from me. Practice mindfulness to make the most out of any of the time that you do have to care for yourself. Take slow, deep breaths. Focus on your senses. Try to be fully present in whatever you're doing. Not only does mindfulness reduce stress, but it also has the power to help you slow down and really take care of yourself. Make small goals, right? Taking care of yourself well, it doesn't happen overnight. And so you have to chunk it out and decide that you're going to walk around the block tonight. You're going to eat healthier. You're not going to do as much fast food. And you work your goal to no fast food. Wow. Set some boundaries. Sometimes there are other adults, frankly, who are pulling on you, right? They're pulling on you and taking some of your precious time that you could be using for self-care. You've got to limit the amount of time and energy that you're giving away to other people. Having that tough conversation with others, it's worth it though. You're worth it, and you're important enough to do that. Remember that you're not alone. We have never had so many people struggling to get their mental health issues under control, to start feeling good about themselves again, to really be what you maybe were before COVID. You need to remember that you are sometimes, especially if you're a single parent family, you're the most important adult in that room. And your kids are looking at you to model what they need to become. And so pushing yourself a little bit, taking the kids with you to go walk outside after dinner, play soccer at the park now that it's warm enough, play on the playground, and have fun conversation with your kids. Light, fun, silly conversations. It will lighten your soul. But please understand, it starts with you. And self-care with you may mean that once a week, you tell kids, okay, during this TV show, for 30 minutes, I'm taking a bubble bath. And nobody's coming in. Everybody's needs have been taken care of. You've eaten dinner. We've walked around the block. You have all taken time to get homework done. You've been awarded this chance to look at the TV show for 30 minutes. I'm going to go in and take a shower, and I expect you not to disturb me for those 30 minutes till the show's over. And we'll all live happier ever after. If you will let me do that, kids. So, little things like that. All right. So, as always, our time together is short, or fast, I should say, maybe. But public education is important. It's worth it to talk about. You're worth it to talk about because you're part of public education. And when you are suffering, we suffer, your kids suffer, your community suffers. So we'll talk more on mental health issues this month of May. But for now, thank you for being on. I hope that you left a little bit more educated in some of the interesting things happening in public education, some of the concerning things that are going on, and some of the politics that are impacting public education. But mostly, I hope you left with the understanding of how important this all is. We all must be part of helping kids become more than hourly wage earners when they graduate. We need career-minded taxpayers who will help keep our economy strong in the future. If we don't help these kids today, they're not going to help us later when we need them the most. So join me in my pub ed advocacy, and we'll see you again next week. And don't forget to like or follow us so you can get notified of any future shows. I don't know if you know this, but if you missed the 8 o'clock Sunday, you can see it again. It'll be rebroadcast at 6 p.m. on Thursday. So if you don't get a chance Sunday and you don't get a chance to listen before, look for the notifications, click on it 6 p.m. Thursday, and you'll catch up nicely before the next show. All right, everyone. I hope that you got vaccinated if that's what you needed and wanted. I hope that you stay covered, you stay safe, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.